I was reborn into the night of the imperial dance. The very first thing I did that night was to intentionally fall down the stairs and sprain my ankle. In my past life, as a lowly dancer from the academy, I seduced a wise ruler and made him lose his mind over me. In the end, I was executed by 1,000 cuts. For 10 years, I was his bewitching concubine who ruined the nation. For me, he emptied the harem and betrayed his childhood sweetheart. He banished all loyal officials. The day I died, he smiled and told me, I regret it now. To abandon Wanwan for you. And to throw away my reputation as a wise king. He seemed not to know that this life was already a foregone conclusion, with no way to turn back. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the night of the performance. It was an early spring night. A biting evening breeze swept through my thin skirt. I sat slumped by the stone steps, rubbing my throbbing ankle. Just like in my previous life, someone had tripped me. I was the lead dancer. Knowing the emperor would be watching while drunk, some grew jealous. They tripped me while everyone's attention was elsewhere. But this time, I didn't struggle to stand up just to see him. The head matron pushed aside the dancers laughing at my misfortune. She ran over, grabbed my arm, and helped me up. Her voice was filled with worry. Iha, can you still perform? I slowly lifted my head, and gave a very slow, weak shake of my head. I said with a look of disappointment, I can't. I knew in my heart that by missing tonight, the lowly dancer and the all-powerful emperor would likely never meet again in this lifetime. I went to the side room and took off the dazzling gown. I removed the hairpins covering my head. I handed my headpiece to the new lead dancer. The matron undid my hair and looked at my face in the mirror, sighing repeatedly. How could such an accident happen now? You were supposed to. The banquet was filled with civil and military officials and nobility. I could have used this chance to escape my humble status. That's how it was in my previous life. Back then, I was very stubborn. I didn't want those who harmed me to succeed. I suppressed the pain and danced through half the performance. The crowd cheered. Only Xia Wangji noticed my bruised ankle beneath my flying skirt. He saw the scattered tears within my smile. The moment I couldn't hold on and collapsed, the emperor set down his wine cup, hurried down from the platform, and took me into his arms. Despite my breach of etiquette before the court, not only was I not sentenced to death, I didn't receive even the slightest punishment. You are very special, he said. Xia Wangji was captivated by my vitality. It was love at first sight. In my memories of those 10+ years, except for the age of 5 when I was sold to the academy due to poverty, I lived a very comfortable life. I was at the top of the academy. The first time I met him, I won the emperor's favor. This made me arrogant and ignorant of the world, unaware of the malice in people's hearts. The day I was favored and titled noble consort, a light rain was falling. Someone knelt in the courtyard for a long time. The maid serving me whispered, that was the eldest daughter of the minister's family. Yu Suiwan, Xia Wangji's old flame. The decree for noble consort was originally meant for her. I opened the window and silently watched her in her white dress, hair loose. She knelt very straight, losing none of her pride. She only begged Xia Wangji to withdraw the decree, stating Shaniha was of humble birth, and her character did not match the rank, but I was the one he chose. The emperor said back then, I am fond of her. He looked at her face for only a moment. I will find a good husband for you. Do not mention such nonsense again. She seemed very heartbroken. Her whole body was trembling. She bit her lip until the color faded. Yet she didn't let the tears in her eyes fall. I walked out into the cold wind and rain. Her steps were unsteady. Xia Wangji held an umbrella over me, grabbing my cold hand to warm it in his. Yu Suiwan slowly looked into my eyes. Enchanting others with your face. Favor ends when beauty fades. It's not because of a grudge, noble consort, but this is my warning to you. I only gave an arrogant laugh. That was a time of boundless glory. Uneducated as I was, how could I understand? I thought I could dance for a long time. With good food and drink in the palace, it would be hard for my face to age a single bit. I wasn't necessarily worse than those pretentious young ladies who looked down on me. Xia Wangji did indeed favor me exclusively for several years. He would play the zither, and I would dance under the trees. He would read documents, and I would grind the ink beside him. At the height of his love, he swore that once I bore his child, he would silence the officials and make me empress. He truly gave his heart at the start. But later, everything changed. It wasn't because of what Yu Suiwan said about beauty fading. It was because Xia Wangji finally saw what kind of person I was. When he was troubled by court affairs, I heard that Yu Suiwan used to be very talented. She could always help with ideas and ease his worries. But me? I couldn't even join the conversation. I barely knew any words. He didn't say it out loud, but deep down, he felt very disappointed. I would even bring him trouble, causing him to argue with old ministers every day, making the Empress Dowager unhappy. I would also act spoiled at the wrong times, forcing him to set aside his dignity to coax me, as if we were just an ordinary sweet couple. One day, Xia Wangji didn't realize I was sleeping in the side hall. He casually mentioned to a minister that the noble consort was nice, but she only has a face. Her mind is too simple. He gave a sigh. the minister guessed his thoughts and mentioned someone else, saying he'd heard that the younger daughter of the Yu family was much like her elder sister, clever and sharp. Xia Wangji was stunned for a long time, then shook his head with a bitter smile. Enough, watch your words. If the noble consort hears, I'll have to coax her for a long time again. He didn't know I had already heard him, and because of those dismissive words, I hid in the side hall and cried for a long time. I slowly stopped dancing and began to study and read. At the end of that year, the wives of the officials came to the palace for New Year's greetings. Listening to their auspicious words, I rarely mustered up the courage to join in with a few sentences. Suddenly, the room went silent, followed by a few snickers from somewhere. I then understood I had used the wrong words. What I said was a jumbled mess, making everyone laugh in secret. Xia Wangji coaxed me gently for a while, then laughed self-deprecatingly. I didn't expect when I was young that my future woman would be so foolish. Indeed, his childhood friend had a great family background and outstanding talent. But me? I only had my face, vulgar and ignorant. The real turning point was the news of Yu Suwen's death. News reached the capital. Previously, her father had found her embarrassing and casually married her off far from the capital. She didn't live a good life. The death of a local official's wife shouldn't have reached the emperor's ears. But Xia Wangji found out anyway. At that time, the palace was preparing for my birthday. He flew into a huge rage, tore down the lanterns I had just hung under the eaves, and smashed them into the corner. He curled his lip coldly. Sheniha, do you know how the censors are cursing me? They say you are too arrogant, and that I am an old fool. Birthdays happen every year. Must you insist on such a grand celebration and make things difficult for me? I looked at the broken lanterns, choking up. I understood in my heart that being with someone of my entertainer background for life made things difficult for him. An emperor's family matters are not private. They are matters of state. This lantern was something I had spent days and nights making by hand. It wasn't truly wasteful. I rolled up my sleeves, revealing hands scratched by bamboo strips. I made the lantern myself. I never intended to give anyone a reason to criticize. Xia Wangji was silent for a moment, his face full of guilt. He pulled me into his arms. I'm sorry. I couldn't control my temper today. A tear fell from his eye, landing on the back of my neck, feeling somewhat hot. Only much later did I realize. Those tears were for Yu Suiwan. They were supposed to be a match made in heaven. In my 10th year of favor, I had a son and a daughter. Both children were charming, making the Empress Dowager's heart soften for once, and she criticized me less often. It was also in this year that Xia Wangji followed the minister's wishes and installed an empress. That woman was Yu Suwen's younger sister from the same mother. Though she was young, she was mature and steady, managing the harem in a way that commanded respect. Except for me. The empress hated me. She blamed her elder sister's death entirely on me. The emperor didn't actually love her, and rarely visited her. Yet he still gave my children to her to raise. When that matter arose, I lowered my pride for the first time and begged him. He avoided my gaze, only tightly clutching my hand and bowing his head to kiss my fingertips. The two children. It's better to let the empress raise them. I fought back my tears. I finally understood that no matter how hard I tried to learn over the years, the emperor had never truly respected me. I was the children's birth mother, but I wasn't worthy of being the mother to princesses and princes. At the end of the year, half the country was hit by blizzards. Rebellions broke out everywhere. Vassal kings took the opportunity to revolt. The emperor issued an edict of self-reproach and performed sacrificial rites. While he was overwhelmed, the empress called me in private and listed my crimes one by one. One year, the emperor wanted to move the capital to Jinling. The old ministers blocked him, saying it was only because I loved eating stone fish that he had the idea. They said a bewitching concubine had deluded him. One year I didn't get pregnant, and the emperor refused to select new concubines. A loyal minister protested to the death, nearly losing his life. In truth, none of it was my fault. But sometimes, faced with immense difficulties, the emperor would also regret it. He would mutter, to abandon Wanwan for you, and to lose my reputation. It really didn't seem worth it. I listened to the accusations, my cheeks cold and aching from the north wind. My expression gradually became wooden. The empress, behind the emperor's back, had me forced to drink poisoned wine. A casual reward meant to pacify the commoners. The noble consort must use her life to atone. When I was dying, I struggled to see the emperor one last time. He held my gradually softening body, his head buried in my neck, his throat choking up, almost losing his voice. I favored you alone for 10 years. Even your brother was promoted because of it. I consider my conscience clear. Let us never meet again in the next life. A few tears blocked my vision. Before the end, the dim yellow candlelight blurred like the moon before my eyes, growing larger and clearer. My finger touched the smooth bronze mirror. Red lips and white teeth, eyes curved in a smile. It was the 16-year-old me. The me of this lifetime. Faced with the matron's shock and pain, someone intentionally pushed me. I said weakly. However, Perhaps this is a good thing. When I walked back to the academy, the sky was completely dark. I walked very slowly, listening to the group gossip behind me. After the banquet ended, the emperor issued the decree that hadn't seen the light of day in my previous life, making Yu Suiwan noble consort, and giving her the phoenix seal. Everyone thought that once she had a child, she would surely become empress. That was the position I came so close to in my past life, yet could never attain. On this very night, a lucky dancer was granted a marriage by the emperor, and received a special pardon. They spoke of me, who hadn't gone to perform. Some looked at me, with either sympathy or ridicule. I listened quietly, my heart completely calm. Actually, missing this opportunity was fine. There would be others later. My long-lost brother from my previous life would return in triumph with the great general. He would use his military merit just to take me home. Calculating now, I only need to wait 3 more months. The emperor has a good heart. Since he hasn't seen me in this life, he would have no reason to refuse. My leg injury hadn't healed, so I took the chance to rest for half a month. With a new noble consort established, there were many banquets. I avoided them all, time after time. During this half-month, a wave of new concubines entered the palace. Unlike the past life, the emperor didn't seem to favor any of them. He was busy with state affairs every day, often not visiting the harem for half a month. I wasn't supposed to know these things. But one day, Lady Pei's maid, Yunlu, came to see me privately. She said, the emperor seemed distracted. Once, while watching the rainbow raiment dance, he looked a few extra times. Her ladyship wants to learn this dance, and has already requested and received permission from the noble consort. The manager said the best dancer of this piece wasn't the lead from that day, but a girl named Shin. So I was sent to invite Miss Shin to the palace. Though she said invite, her tone was very firm. There was no way to refuse. Besides, the gap between me and a concubine was too large. I simply couldn't say no. The next day, when I followed Yunlu into the palace, the rain that had been falling in the courtyard had stopped. Outside the red walls, the sky was blue. The willows were turning green. I put on a veil. When Lady Pei saw me, she was satisfied with my modesty. The emperor has seen all kinds of great beauties. There's no need for you to be so careful. As she said this, her voice slowly trailed off, carrying a bit of loneliness. If the emperor were truly lustful, then we wouldn't have to be so worried. In fact, in the previous life, the Empress Dowager had also been curious about Xia Wangji. When he insisted on making me noble consort, she had lost her temper and brought several great beauties to pressure him. There are so many beauties in the world. Why must you insist on honoring a mere dancer? Xia Wangji didn't give them a single glance. Only his heart knew for certain that he would never change in this lifetime. At that time, no one believed it. Childhood companions, affections grown over time, none could compare to the heart stir at first sight. When I snapped back to reality, I had already bowed my head and offered a few pleasantries. Lady Pei smiled and didn't continue. She began to learn the dance from me, though I was teaching her. Her status was far above mine. It was always her way. If she was interested, I'd dance with her for half the day. If she was tired, I could leave the palace after 2 hours. Walking the palace paths often, I would sometimes encounter the carriages of the nobility. The emperor and noble consort sat together in a sedan, maids on both sides fanning them. The handsome emperor, dressed in his imperial dragon robe, sat on the sedan chair, sometimes with a smile, slightly lowering his head to converse. The noble consort glanced over as he spoke. I immediately withdrew my gaze, kneeling by the road and bowing my head even before Yunlu. Perhaps because it wasn't convenient for outsiders to hear their business. As the sedan approached, the noble consort fell silent. Only a single gaze fell very casually upon the top of my head. Xia Wangji's hand tapped the armrest, his voice very indifferent. He casually asked, "Who is that? Her dress doesn't look like a palace maid's." He paused for a moment, as if waiting for me to lift my head and answer for myself. I kept my lips tightly sealed, my palms covered in sweat, not moving an inch. Yunlu said very respectfully, "She's here to teach Lady Pei how to dance. The dancer is preparing to leave the palace." Xia Wangji gave a casual acknowledgement, moving out of sight without taking it to heart. A month passed, and Lady Pei learned the dance. She danced exceptionally well. Good news kept coming from the northwest. The emperor was very happy, and finally had some free time to visit the concubines he had neglected for so long. The noble consort appeared very magnanimous, urging him to be impartial. So, by rank, Lady Pei happened to be the fourth. It was evening when Xia Wangji arrived. Lady Pei insisted on keeping me there, asking me to check her movements and expressions once more, to ensure everything was perfect. I had also chosen her clothes and headpiece. I knew all too well what Xia Wangji liked. The sun was about to set. She danced under the peach blossoms in the imperial garden. Her flying skirt caught the last bit of the sunset. The dance was so beautiful. It didn't seem to belong to the mortal world. This scene was captured entirely by Xia Wangji's eyes. I quietly retreated with Yunlu. Not long after, Lady Pei called me into the room. Just me alone. The light was dim. And the silhouettes were blurred. She seemed very happy, chatting with the emperor half-spoiled and half-admiringly. Her tone was very soft. This dance I performed was taught by her. Now that she's here, how will your majesty reward her? The emperor leaned lazily against his chair, left hand supporting his chin, right hand holding a wine cup. He turned to look at me. Lift your head first. My body was stiff. I slowly lifted my head. My gaze met the emperor's, and he suddenly seemed to grow serious. He stared into my eyes for a long time without a word. I lowered my eyelids and quietly touched my ear. The string at the back was tied tight. The veil hadn't fallen. After a long time, he finally spoke, his voice sounding a bit raspy. Since she suits your taste, why not remove her low status and keep her here to serve you? For the first time, the emperor had proactively asked to keep someone. Even if Lady Pei were a fool, she understood now. She bit her lip, very unwillingly suppressing her feelings, not speaking for a long time. The situation was at a stalemate. The emperor looked at her, his expression poor, but he was the one who gave in first. Forget it. Reward her with 100 gold pieces and dismiss her. My heart was pounding. I thanked him and left. The next day, Yunlu came to bring me a message. I didn't need to go to the palace anymore. I was just preparing to practice my dancing then. Others thought I had offended Lady Pei, and they were all snickering. They thought Shaniha was lucky, and could always find good opportunities. But now it seemed that even with good luck served on a plate, she could find a way to mess it all up. Yunlu had already walked away. But then she turned back and said to me very seriously, "The noble consort said Lady Shen is quite good, very meticulous and cautious in her work. However, Her Highness has learned everything, so she no longer needs Lady Shen for the time being." Her pronunciation was very clear, and her volume was loud enough for everyone to hear. I was deeply moved in my heart. For the first time since my rebirth, I wanted to cry. Thank you, Yunlu. After losing the work in the palace, I stayed in my room every day to practice dancing. In my previous life, I thought I was a good dancer. But my temper was too sharp, and I spoke without thinking, offending many people. Later, I spent 10 years in the palace. And for the sake of making the emperor happy, my temper was eventually ground down. Now, when others come to mock me, I just act as if I don't hear them. If anyone asks for advice, I will teach them everything I know. Everyone said I had changed my temper. But over time, everyone became happy to spend time with me, and stopped kicking me while I was down. The general won the war, and would return to the capital in a few days. We were preparing to rehearse the dance of breaking the array. Before the grand palace banquet, I received a letter from my brother. My brother, Shin Zhaohe, had endured 7 or 8 years in the army. This time, he was promoted to deputy general based on his military merit. He always had a knot in his heart. When his younger sister was a child, she was forcefully taken into the academy and relegated to low status. Now, he entered the capital laden with honors, only asking the emperor for permission to free his sister from her low status. The letter said, he met the emperor on the day he returned to the capital, and the emperor had already agreed. We just had to wait for the imperial decree to be issued during the banquet. I clutched the letter tightly, almost crying with joy. So on the night of the performance, I was so nervous I could barely breathe. I could only give up the lead position. It was also a coincidence that everyone had to wear masks for the dance. Everyone toasted each other, listening to the music while watching the dance. After the dance was over, the emperor suddenly spoke, asking 2 people to stay. One was the lead dancer. The other was General Shin's younger sister, who had been lost for many years. My brother knelt before the emperor, pulled me behind him, and spoke from the bottom of his heart. The emperor directly gave the order to remove me from my low status. My brother's voice was loud, completely drowning out the sound of me thanking him. The emperor supported his chin with his hand, his gaze falling upon another person. Once I had packed everything, I moved into the residence my brother had set up in the capital. My brother asked what my plans were for the future. Do you have someone you like? No. Is there anything you want to do? Does wanting to be a smart and capable person count? My brother glanced at me and patted the back of my head. I've heard people say that back in the academy, you were always the lead dancer. In such a big setting, everyone was watching you. Ha 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 ha. That's already very clever and amazing. My throat felt tight, and I couldn't even speak. I just looked at him blankly. Sister, if you really want to find something to do, haha, I'll sacrifice my dignity, pull some strings, and send you to serve in the Princess Royal Changning's manor. Princess Royal Changning was a very powerful character, the exact opposite of me. Xia Wangji's rise to power wasn't honorable. I heard that during the rebellion in the palace years ago, he almost lost. It was his eldest sister who led the troops to break through the siege, and pushed him onto the throne. She had done many good deeds, and was most supported by the people. When I died in my previous life, my brother wept bitterly. He couldn't stop at all. He was silent for a long time, before saying something very reckless. If Xia Wangji can't manage the country well, how can he let a woman take the blame for him? I wiped my eyes that had just felt sour. Alright then. I'll have to trouble you to sacrifice your dignity then. Before I could meet the Princess Royal, an order from the noble consort summoned me into the palace. Our statuses were now completely reversed. I knelt while Yu Suiwan sat. He didn't let me kneel for long. He personally came down and helped me up. He looked closely at my face. What a rare beauty. He smiled. No wonder the emperor has been thinking about you. I could only kneel back on the ground. This humble girl is afraid. He casually asked me a few questions. In this life, my temper has completely changed. I am low profile and easygoing. He didn't mention my background. And he spoke very gently. Always planning things for Xia Wangji's sake. You're such a good girl. Do you want to enter the palace to serve the emperor? Logically speaking, with such a smart and open-minded leader of the harem, plus the emperor's attention and favoritism, there was no reason to refuse. Without even thinking, I shook my head. This humble girl does not wish to go. Behind the screen, a vase fell over. Xia Wangji stepped out, his face showing no emotion. He sent his subordinates away and stared at me. His tone was easygoing, seemingly patient. Why are you unwilling? Do you have someone you like? I couldn't just make something up. So I lowered my head. My voice sounded raspy. No, I simply do not wish to enter the palace. Fine. Xia Wangji didn't say another word. He used to always be smiling at me, which sometimes made me forget that the person before me was a real emperor capable of killing. There was nothing he couldn't get his hands on. He gradually leaned closer. Under the harsh light, his dark shadow enveloped me like a thick cloud. His long eyelashes drooped, making it hard to see his expression. But although his voice was gentle, it carried a force that wouldn't take no for an answer. This is not for you to decide, Iha. It was raining outside again. It seemed like summer was approaching. The rain pitter-pattered on the plantain leaves. The noise kept me awake all night. In my days, I couldn't tell if it was my past life or this one. Someone was kneeling below the steps again. I couldn't help but sigh. Noble consort, he was also in a difficult position. Now there were two noble consorts in the palace. One could only rely on being favored. I pushed open the window to look. He was arguing with Xia Wangji. Shaniha is unwilling. Your Majesty cannot mistreat her like this. Snatching a commoner's daughter. The history books will record it, and it won't be good for your Majesty's reputation. He didn't say a single bad word about me. Actually, thinking about it, he really was a good person. It's just that he used to have that air of a wealthy young lady, being high and mighty. Xia Wangji wouldn't listen at all right now. It's rare for me to take a liking to someone. How could I easily let her go? I took an umbrella and walked outside. It was for Yu Suiwan. The moisture on his face was probably rain, because he rarely cried. I handed him a dry handkerchief. Forget it, Your Highness. I tilted the umbrella slightly to block the drifting raindrops. Don't say these things for me anymore. The ground is very cold. He clutched the handkerchief with both hands and buried his face in them. His shoulders were shaking, and his voice was extremely small. I'm sorry. I thought I could be a good consort and help the emperor. But now it seems I can't do anything. Instead, I've trapped you in this mess. Handing the umbrella to his maid, I reached out to help him up. He didn't understand that many years later, the emperor would miss his intelligence and would need his ideas. It's just a pity that the emperor never knows how to cherish the person in front of him. Saying these words could easily provoke the emperor to fly into a rage. Before he could punish Yu Suiwan, I stood under the eaves and smiled at him. Your Majesty, the rain is too heavy outside. Please come inside. I leaned by the window, watching Yu Suiwan walk away. The emperor's voice betrayed no emotion. You certainly know how to look out for him. I could only say, he considers the emperor. I consider him. Which means I am also considering the emperor. The emperor hugged me directly from behind and chuckled softly. So, you've yielded now? I gave a very soft ahm. Your Majesty, I want to see someone. And that person was Chongning. The Princess Royal was the elder sister the emperor respected most. He loosened his arms, his tone turning cold. Even if my elder sister comes to plead for you, I will absolutely not change my mind. But in fact, the Princess Royal would know about this before tomorrow. He finally agreed to let me see Princess Royal Chongning. Xia Chongning and I sat face to face. The surroundings were quiet. He stared at me, sighed with a face full of guilt. Regarding your troubles, Lord Shen already begged me, but I'm really helpless. Lord Shen? I was a bit dazed. Then I immediately shook my head. I'm not here for that. The emperor at least has feelings for me, and he treats me quite well. My troubles are nothing. I immediately sat up straight and cleared my throat. My words were precise and slow. Cao Cao once dreamed of 3 horses eating at the same trough. Later, the Sima father and son usurped the throne. Confucius dreamed of sitting between 2 pillars before he died, and passed away 7 days later. A few days ago, I also had a dream. The princess raised an eyebrow after listening. Outside, the heavy rain was battering the window. It would last for a long time, until the Yellow River breached its banks. The emperor felt it was better to lose than to gamble. So he dug open the embankment, causing the flood to surge everywhere, and even more people to flee from the disaster. His expression turned serious. I had seen the Princess Royal plead for the people, so I knew she loved them. As for how I could remember things so clearly, in my previous life, at this time, I had a very good relationship with the emperor, and we were together almost every day. Regarding the disaster, the ministers had two suggestions. One was to recruit people to plug the breach. The other was to directly dig open the embankment. The emperor chose the latter. Later, everyone said he was obsessed with women, and had neglected serious matters. It was all blamed on me. The Princess Royal noted all of this before she left. She said, "I really don't understand why anyone would say you're stupid. Many years ago, I indeed didn't understand anything. But up to today, I've taken many detours, listened to much mockery, and endured a lot of hardship." Yu Suiwan was placed under house arrest. His seal of the inner palace was handed to me. Suddenly, everyone in the palace said I was deeply calculating, having used the influence of other concubines to enchant the emperor, while pretending to back down. Now even noble consort Yu was no match for me. The concubines came to greet me every day, but the familiar Pei Zhaoyi wouldn't even give me a decent look. I sat in the main seat watching him return. Thinking back to a few months ago, he was lazy and didn't want to dance then, and had acted spoiled with me despite the difference in our status. He muttered about the emperor coming again in the evening, not wanting to dance under the scorching sun, for fear of getting a tan. He only wanted to keep me, which made him sad. But when I was being mocked, Yunlu said the noble consort had mentioned that Lady Shen was quite good. I had also seen consort Xian. She was a reserved and talented woman. She used to come chat with Pei Zhaoyi. When she met me, she took out the poems she had written. They were in the style of ancient UFO. She smiled with her eyes crinkled. "Can you sing them?" I gave a somewhat awkward smile. "I can't, but I can choreograph a dance to express the lyrics." Consort Shu was best at playing the pipa. Born into nobility, she had once told me to dance in an arrogant tone. The most beautiful dance in the world should be paired with the finest pipa. Yet now, everything had been ruined by Xia Wangji. I sat upright in the main seat, and saw them whispering to each other. Yet they simply refused to look at me. Tears fell in an instant. I cried with urgent grief. Pei Zhaoyi was the first to be stunned. "Your Highness, what's wrong?" I rushed down the steps and crouched by his skirt, burying my face in his lap. Being forced into the palace was already painful enough, and now even you all are ignoring me. I had been a seductress consort for 10 years. No one could see through my methods. I peeked at the bright, clean white jade tiles. I was absolutely certain that no one could resist a beauty's tears. Everyone rushed over to comfort me. Just like that, we made up. The continuous heavy rain finally stopped. A few days later, Xie Chongning, who had been away from the capital for a long time, returned. The people along the way lined up to welcome him. The flood disaster should have caused huge losses, but much was saved because he went to the site in person. The people in some remote areas even only knew of the Princess Royal Chongning, and were unaware of the emperor in the capital. Xia Wangji was a bit unhappy. He often sighed when he spoke to me. Now, my imperial sister's prestige seems to be even higher than mine. I leaned in his arms and spoke softly. The princess's reputation belongs to the imperial family, and the reputation also belongs to the emperor. He wasn't very happy after hearing that. He frowned slightly, not because of that matter, but because of my attitude. To me, you always have this look of insincerity, as if any random coaxing will do. Before, when I refused your majesty was unhappy. Now that I am obeying your majesty is still unhappy. What more can I do? Xia Wangji propped his elbow on the soft couch as he leaned against it, looking up at me, somewhat distracted. The candlelight reflected on his face, and his eyes shimmered. He seemed a bit dazed. "I always feel that you shouldn't have this kind of temper. In my previous life, I indeed didn't. Those sharpest edges, and that most difficult pride had all been ground down by him. Then what kind of person does your majesty think I should be?" Xia Wangji took my hand, and whispered with his face against my palm. "You have a face that is incredibly noble and proud." I gave a faint laugh. He actually guessed it right. When I wasn't being looked down upon or bullied, I was indeed like that. Xie Chongning had been very busy lately. The princesses of this dynasty were very powerful, and had been interfering in court affairs for a long time. Now there was even a memorial accusing her of whining over ministers. However, as soon as the memorial reached the emperor, I threw it away. Xia Wangji would discuss national affairs with Yu Suiwan, but he remained guarded. Whereas me, a dancer who was illiterate, used his memorials to prop up table legs, and he would only say to remember to put them back. When I asked him to share military power with my brother, he occasionally agreed, laughing and saying, "Oh, so you've realized your role as a wicked consort, whether in my past life or now." At the beginning when the world was at peace, he indeed doted on me without limit. Xia Chongning would sometimes come to ask about my prophetic dreams, and play a game of chess with me while she was at it. I told her everything. In the 10th year, there will be a heavy blizzard. The people won't be able to survive. And will rebel everywhere. She frowned slightly when I mentioned the emperor's mistakes. Later I became a wicked consort. And was ordered to die. The poisoned wine was given by the empress, but I finally saw through it. Xia Wangji must have agreed. He wanted to shift the blame onto me, using my life to appease the people's anger. My family was all in the capital. For the sake of her family, the empress would never dare to touch me. Right before I died, Xia Wangji never told me the truth. He forced the empress to be the villain. I was silent for a while. Before looking up at Xia Changning, my eyes were very serious. At the very end, I said almost word for word. Then, to save the people from the fire, the princess led a rebellion, and became the empress. This was the only lie I told her. But she could do it. If she were a man, she would have won on the day of the coup, but she never thought of it. If I told her that this was like the previous disasters, something bound to happen in the future, as if it were destined by heaven. Xia Changning stood up abruptly, her sleeve accidentally knocking a chess piece off the table. She pressed her palm on the table. Leaning forward, she took several deep breaths. The previous times you told me that in the future disasters, some corrupt officials who did nothing would emerge. I dealt with them in advance. So I will respond to that. Everything depends on human effort. Heaven's will cannot be changed. But regarding what humans can do in advance, I completely played the role of a bad woman once. Colluding with Xia Changning from the inside and out. I secretly sabotaged the emperor several times. I was never superstitious. But the emperor probably really provoked heaven's wrath. 2 major disasters occurred this year. And the people were filled with resentment. He also caused a scandal by forcefully seizing a commoner's daughter. Everyone felt the emperor was immoral. My brother joined Xia Changning's rebellion under a noble cause. When the emperor was driven to a dead end, he couldn't believe it for his life. I also contributed a lot to this situation. On the Red Palace walls, the guards under Xia Changning's command held bows and arrows, pointing them straight at the emperor below. He stared at me. His eyes red, his gaze full of disbelief. How could it possibly be you? Don't you even know a single word? Xia Changning turned to look at me. Finding it unexpected, she gave a laugh. Brother, you are truly foolish. She knows far more than just reading words. I stared at Xia Wangji. Actually, I didn't hide it well. As long as a person is literate, it can always be seen through small details. The slip up, you just never thought highly of me. Just like a long time ago, when my children wanted to start their studies. I had clearly finished reading the classics long ago. Yet Xia Wangji said, you don't need to read them. They are useless for you. Xia Wangji's lips moved, as if he had a belly full of words. To prevent any further surprises, without waiting for him to speak, Xia Changning ordered the arrows to be released. A volley of arrows fell. Xia Wangji opened his mouth, but only spat out a large mouthful of blood. His voice was garbled. I remember it all now. I've heard people say that when a person is close to death, they always recall many things from the past. His gaze gradually became hollow. Images of the past flashed before his eyes. It was a spring night, with a captivating dancer right before him. The dance to the neon feather raincoat was only halfway through. Her swaying skirt made her look like a celestial fairy. But when the dance was only half finished, she fell down. Xia Wangji went to ask her about it afterward. Were you dancing while injured? She responded softly, her eyes still filled with tears. Someone tried to harm me, but I just didn't want to let them have their way. She was indeed very special, lively, and spirited, completely unlike the rigid and rule-abiding noble daughters around him. So, when she mentioned that she didn't want to share her husband with other women, Xia Wangji agreed. But before long, he began to see clearly. Shaniha was a woman with no learning or depth. She barely knew a few simple characters. He was indeed very disappointed, and he let her notice it. She stated she was willing to learn, but Xia Wangji found it ridiculous. Listening to her stutter through those texts, Xia Wangji felt ashamed for her. This was the woman he had chosen. Clumsy, lacking propriety, and arrogantly showy. So much so that when her personality later changed, Xia Wangji didn't pay attention or even notice. He wondered if Yu Suiwan were still by his side. Things would surely be different. She was clever, had unique perspectives, and was more willing to be a good helpmate. But in the end, it was all just a fantasy. Xia Wangji wanted to defend himself. During that time of bearing heavy burdens alone, he was exhausted. He was forced to listen to his ministers for once. Appointing an empress was indeed because state affairs troubled his mind. Along with his resentment, he acted on impulse and indulged the empress. He felt regret afterward. He held her remains and wept for several days. Sent her to the imperial cemetery, hoping they could be buried together after death. Those foolish things were done in a past life. In this life, he had never betrayed her. Must he also end up with such a fate? After the new ruler ascended the throne, I no longer had prophetic dreams, and I stopped offering advice to help. Yu Suiwan assisted Xia Changning, temporarily doing the work of a chancellor under the title of imperial noble consort. I wasn't as smart as she was, So Xie Changning assigned me to the music bureau, responsible for managing the music. During this year, I often appeared in the great sacrificial ceremonies, performing grand dances. My expression was solemn. I was no longer just entertainment for others. The new empress has a very mild temper. Her most frequent word is approved. What does she approve? I approve of your dislike for studying. Switch to dancing. I approve of our chancellor being plain-looking. As long as his mind is sharp. I approve of our champion scholar being reticent. As long as his memory is extraordinary. I approve of everyone having distinct personalities, each with their own unique talents. Don't say the road ahead is long. Good luck will naturally come.